The sky above Viera's capital glowed with a strange green hue, the light refracting off the towering crystal spires like 1,000 broken diamonds. From her high balcony, Queen Celera watched as the city she had vowed to protect began to crumble. Alarms echoed across the streets, the piercing wail cutting through the chaos like a blade. Smoke and fire rose from the lower districts where the enemy forces had first landed. For the first time in her life, Celera felt fear grip her chest, not for herself, but for her people. Her guards, once the proud defenders of the throne, were scattered like frightened birds. Some ran blindly into the streets, shouting orders that no one listened to. Others had disappeared entirely, abandoning their posts in what could only be described as panic. Celera could not understand it. These were elite warriors trained for this moment, sworn to die for her. Yet when the moment came, they fled. She clenched her hands into fists, nails biting into her palms. She had never felt so alone. "Your Majesty," one of her advisors whispered, bowing low. His voice trembled. We can no longer hold them. Perhaps surrender is the only option." This was betrayal from the ones she had trusted most. Her guards had abandoned her. She could not rely on anyone but herself now. And then from the shadows of the throne room, a figure stepped forward. Human, tall, strong, with a calmness that seemed almost unnatural amid the panic. Captain Daniel Kane, from Earth's Interstellar Peace Corps, moved with precision and confidence. He had been sent as a liaison, a diplomat, to observe and advise. He was not a warrior of Viera, yet he had eyes that missed nothing, a mind that saw possibilities where others saw only chaos. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady and clear, "we don't have to give up. There's a way out of this." Their kind was strange, unpredictable, and not known for emotional control in moments like this. Yet something in him, an aura of calm confidence, made her believe just for a moment that perhaps hope was not lost. Kane did not wait for her answer. He began issuing precise instructions to those guards who remained, organizing barricades, directing the few loyal troops to key choke points, and scanning for weak spots in the enemy's advance. He moved like a conductor of an orchestra, each command sharp, deliberate, and effective. Celera felt a flicker of admiration. She had underestimated humans, assuming they would be fragile and hesitant. This one was neither. Hours passed like minutes. Explosions shook the crystal towers, glass shattered in brilliant showers, and yet Kane remained calm. He ducked low to avoid a falling beam, rolled behind a column, and fired precise shots at the advancing enemy with a weapon Celera did not even recognize. Every move he made seemed to slow the inevitable, buying precious time. Celera realized something she had not expected. He was protecting her. Not for glory, not for fear, but because he had chosen to. The thought was strange, foreign, but comforting. She had spent her life surrounded by loyalty, bound by duty or fear, but this human, this outsider, was there simply because he wanted to be. It made her heart beat faster, not in fear, but in cautious hope. "Your Majesty," Kane said, glancing at her. "We need to move. There's a shuttle in the lower hangar. I can get you out, but we have to leave now." Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Lead the way," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her heart. They moved quickly, weaving through smoke-filled corridors and debris-strewn halls. Kane's knowledge of the building, paired with his calm guidance, kept them safe from patrols and collapsing structures. Celera followed closely, her mind a whirl of fear and determination. She could hear the shouts of her abandoned guards echoing behind them, and a bitter pang of anger flared in her chest. How could they leave her like this? Did they not understand what she had sacrificed for them, for her people? At last, they reached the hangar. The shuttle gleamed in the dim light, small but fast, designed for stealth and speed. Kane worked quickly, inputting codes and checking systems with practiced hands. Celera watched him, her usual composure slipping as she realized how close they had come to being captured, or worse. The enemy forces were already advancing on the hangar doors, their footsteps echoing like thunder. "Almost ready," Kane said, never looking up from the controls. "Once we're in, we can take a route through the asteroid belt. They won't follow us there." The engines hummed to life, and with a sudden jolt, the shuttle lifted off the ground, dodging debris and laser fire. The city shrank below them, fires glowing like embers in the dark. Celera felt a mix of relief and grief. Her people were in danger and her guards had failed her, but she was alive. And she was not alone. Kane's voice broke through her thoughts. "Hold on. It's going to get rough." She realized that she had never felt such fear and such trust simultaneously. This human, this soldier from another world, was keeping her alive. She owed him more than she could put into words. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time seemed meaningless as they dodged and weaved through the chaos of war. Kane's eyes were sharp, his mind always calculating, always thinking of the next move. Solara had watched many battles in her life, studied strategies, and trained in combat, but she had never seen tactics like this. Not even her most brilliant generals could have anticipated every twist, every danger, and responded with such calm efficiency. She began to understand what made humans remarkable, not their strength or numbers, but their ability to think, adapt, and act when everything else fails. Finally, the enemy warships fell behind, unable to match Kane's daring maneuvers. The stars stretched out before them, vast and endless, and for the first time in hours, Solara allowed herself to breathe. She was alive, and she had a protector who had chosen her safety over his own. The thought made her feel strangely warm, even amid the cold vacuum of space. Kane glanced at her, reading her expression. "We're safe for now," he said. "But this is just the beginning. We need to find a place to hide, regroup, and plan our next move." They won't give up easily. Perhaps this was the way forward, not with fear or isolation, but with trust and courage, even from the most unlikely of allies. As the shuttle sped through the endless black of space, Solara allowed herself a moment of reflection. Her guards had abandoned her, but she had not been abandoned entirely. A human soldier, someone she had once considered strange and unpredictable, had stood by her side when all others had fled. And in that moment she realized something profound. Survival was not just about power, numbers, or loyalty bound by duty. Sometimes survival and victory came from courage, cleverness, and an unwavering commitment to protect what mattered most. For the first time in a long time, Solara felt a spark of determination. The war was far from over, but she was alive, and she had a protector who would not fail her. Together, they would face whatever came next, and she vowed silently that she would not let this human nor herself down. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of danger and opportunity, and for the first time, Solara felt ready to fight, not just to survive, but to reclaim what had been lost. The journey ahead would be long and perilous, but she was no longer alone, and that, she realized, made all the difference in the universe. The shuttle hummed through the endless black of space, its small engines leaving faint trails of light behind. Queen Solara sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead, though she saw little of them. Her mind was a storm of thoughts, fear, and questions. She had survived the fall of her city, thanks to this human soldier, but now the uncertainty of what came next pressed down on her like the weight of the void itself. Captain Daniel Kane adjusted the controls with quiet precision. Every movement was deliberate, every glance calculating the position of distant stars and the faint glimmer of enemy sensors. Though he did not speak much, his presence was calming. It was as if he carried his own gravity, a force that drew focus and steadied nerves. Solara found herself watching him more than the stars, trying to understand this strange creature who had become her protector. "You don't have to stare," Kane said without looking at her, sensing her attention. His voice was calm, almost soft, yet it carried authority. "I know this is overwhelming, but it will help if you keep your mind clear. I have commanded armies, strategized wars, yet I've never seen someone like you in action. How can you remain so calm when everything is falling apart?" The advice was simple, almost too simple, but it made sense. Her guards had failed because they let fear control them. Kane succeeded because he refused to give fear that power. For the first time, she wondered if humans were stronger than she had thought, not in muscle, but in mind. The shuttle shifted suddenly, and Solara's heart leapt into her throat. "What was that?" she asked. Kane's eyes flicked to the sensors. "A patrol drone. They must have tracked the shuttle from the city. Nothing serious, just a scout. But we need to lose them before they lead the rest of the fleet here." Rocks and ice blocks the size of mountains loomed ahead, yet Kane navigated through them as if he were walking through a garden. Solara clutched her seat, amazed. Every movement of the shuttle was precise, deliberate, and fearless. "Why do you fight so hard for me?" she asked suddenly. "You are not my subject. You do not owe me anything. Why risk yourself?" In her world, loyalty was bound by duty, by fear, or by allegiance. But this human, this outsider, showed loyalty that was not commanded or earned. It was chosen. And in that choice she sensed strength far greater than any weapon or army. Hours passed, and the patrol drone fell behind, unable to keep up with Kane's daring maneuvers. The stars stretched endlessly around them, cold and silent, yet strangely comforting in their constancy. Solara finally allowed herself to relax slightly, her body leaning back into the seat. She thought about the city she had left behind, about the fires, the screams, and the betrayal of her guards. Anger and grief still burned inside her, but now a new feeling began to take root: trust. They had passed the asteroid field safely, and Kane plotted a course toward a hidden sector known only to a few human and alien allies. It was a neutral zone, unclaimed and unmonitored, where fugitives, diplomats, and those who needed refuge could find shelter. Solara had never heard of such a place. In her world, every corner of space was mapped, controlled, and monitored. The idea of a sanctuary beyond all politics and power was foreign and strangely appealing. The shuttle descended into the sector, passing large floating stations, abandoned ships, and isolated research outposts. Kane guided them to a moon orbiting a distant gas giant, its surface scarred with craters and covered in a faint layer of ice. Here, he explained, they could hide, repair the shuttle, and plan their next move. As they landed, Solara's thoughts drifted to her people. The city was lost, at least for now. Her guards had abandoned her, and she felt a bitter sting at the thought of their cowardice. Yet, seeing Kane's calm determination, she realized that perhaps she did not need them after all. Perhaps survival and victory required new allies, new strategies, and a willingness to trust those she had once ignored. The moon base was small but functional, a network of shelters, laboratories, and workshops designed for secrecy and survival. As they stepped out of the shuttle, the cold air bit at their skin, but Solara hardly noticed. She was more aware of the quiet presence of Kane at her side, scanning the horizon, listening to the faint hum of distant engines, ready for any threat. Inside the base, they were greeted by a small group of humans and aliens who had come together for safety and knowledge. Scientists, engineers, and explorers, all wary but curious, looked at Solara with a mixture of awe and caution. Kane introduced her carefully, explaining her identity, her situation, and the urgency of their presence. Solara spoke to them with authority, yet there was no arrogance in her tone. She shared what she knew of the enemy's plans, their tactics, and the betrayal of her guards. The group listened closely, some nodding in recognition, others whispering quietly to one another. She realized that in this place, leadership was different. It was not about rank or tradition, but about intelligence, trust, and action. Over the following days, Kane worked tirelessly to repair the shuttle and gather intelligence on the enemy fleet. Solara observed him, fascinated by his methods. Where her people relied on strength, Kane relied on strategy. Where her people hesitated, he acted decisively. His mind was a weapon as sharp as any blade, and Solara began to understand that humans were formidable not because of their bodies, but because of their minds. They shared meals, conversations, and quiet moments in the moon base. Solara found herself asking questions about Earth, about humans, about Kane's experiences. He spoke simply, honestly, never boasting, never hiding his own doubts and fears. She found his honesty refreshing, almost shocking in comparison to the rigid protocols and hidden agendas of her court. One evening, as the moon's pale light filtered through the base's windows, Solara stood at the observation deck, looking out at the gas giant's swirling storms below. Kane joined her, standing silently, as if giving her space to think. "They will come for you," he said quietly, not as a warning but as a statement of fact. "And when they do, you must be ready." Kane had shown her that survival was not just about power, weapons, or armies. It was about courage, ingenuity, and trust. Over the next week, they trained together, combining human tactics with Viera skills. Kane taught her new strategies, ways to use the environment to their advantage, and how to anticipate enemy moves. Solara absorbed everything eagerly, her respect for him growing with each lesson. She realized that if her city was ever to be reclaimed, it would not be through old ways or traditional methods. It would be through innovation, intelligence, and alliances, lessons she would never have learned without Kane. By the end of their stay on the moon, Solara had a plan. They would return to Viera, but not with armies or brute force. They would use strategy, alliances, and the courage of a few determined individuals to reclaim what had been lost. Kane had shown her that humans could think like predators, move like shadows, and strike when the enemy least expected. She felt a surge of confidence, a determination she had not felt since the day she ascended the throne. As they prepared to leave the moon base, Solara took one last look at the pale, icy surface. She thought of the city below her people and the guards who had abandoned her. A fire burned in her chest, not anger, not grief, but resolve. She would return, and when she did, she would not just survive. She would reclaim her throne, her people, and her dignity. And she would do it with a human at her side, a soldier who had shown her the power of courage, loyalty, and intelligence. The shuttle lifted off once more, engines humming with quiet determination. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of possibility and danger. Celera settled into her seat, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her mind alive with plans, strategies, and hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, she believed that survival and victory was possible. And with Kane at her side, she knew that nothing, not even betrayal or overwhelming odds, could stop them. The hidden moon base was quiet in the early hours, its corridors bathed in the soft glow of artificial lights. Outside, the gas giant loomed like a silent guardian, swirling clouds of blue and green reflecting faintly on the metal walls. Queen Celera moved slowly through the halls, her mind busy with plans and possibilities. For the first time since the fall of her city, she felt a sense of purpose. She was alive, she had a protector, and she had a chance to reclaim her kingdom. Captain Daniel Kane walked beside her, carrying a small datapad filled with information on the enemy fleet. He spoke quietly, explaining patrol patterns, supply lines, and weaknesses he had discovered through careful observation. Celera listened intently, her eyes narrowing as she absorbed every detail. The human's mind worked differently from her own people. He thought ahead, anticipating moves and countermoves, considering variables she had never even noticed. "We can't just rush back," Kane said, tapping the datapad. "Their forces are too strong. If we go in head first, we'll be destroyed before we even reach the city. We need allies, strategy, and timing." Kane relied on intelligence, preparation, and trust earned through action. She found herself admiring him more with each passing day. "I want to see who will stand with us," Celera said. "I cannot fight alone, and I cannot rely on the guards who abandoned me. We need those who are brave enough to act and wise enough to plan." "Then we start here." He led her deeper into the base, to a large common area where humans and aliens worked together. Scientists, engineers, and explorers paused in their tasks to watch as Celera entered. Some were clearly in awe, others were curious. She was a queen, yes, but more importantly, she had survived when others had fled. That alone gave her authority. Celera spoke to them, her voice calm but commanding. "I am Queen Celera of Viera. My city has been attacked. My guards abandoned me. I come seeking allies, not because I demand loyalty, but because together we can restore order and peace to my people." Tall, with shimmering scales and eyes like molten gold, he nodded respectfully. "We have heard of your plight, Queen Celera. Many here have suffered at the hands of warlords and tyrants. You are not alone. We cannot guarantee safety, but we can help you strike smartly." Over the next several days, Celera and Kane worked closely with the coalition. They mapped enemy patrols, studied ship designs, and learned about the weaknesses of the rival faction. Kane introduced new strategies, teaching Celera to think like a predator, to anticipate enemy moves, and to use the environment to their advantage. Celera absorbed every lesson eagerly. She realized that this was not just about reclaiming her throne. It was about learning a new way to lead through intelligence, preparation, and trust. One evening, as the artificial lights dimmed for rest, Celera walked to the observation deck alone. Kane followed at a distance, sensing her need for space but respecting it. She gazed at the stars, the distant points of light reminding her of the vastness of the universe and of the smallness of her troubles in comparison. Yet she knew that her people depended on her and that the coming battles would not be easy. Kane joined her silently. "You're thinking too far ahead," he said softly, but not as a reprimand. "Focus on what we can do now." Step by step. Using encrypted channels, they sent messages to distant allies, rebellious factions, neutral planets, and other displaced leaders who had grievances against the enemy. Slowly, a network began to form. Celera realized that she was no longer isolated. She had allies, people willing to fight for justice, not just power. As they worked, a small team of volunteers joined them, each bringing unique skills. There was Rin, an alien scout with unmatched tracking abilities. Lyra, a human engineer who could modify weapons and shields. And Taro, a Virean warrior who had refused to flee, waiting for a leader who would act. Together, they began planning small raids and intelligence-gathering missions, testing strategies and building trust. Celera watched them, feeling a mix of pride and relief. These were not the guards who had abandoned her. These were individuals who had chosen to act, who had courage, and who were willing to risk everything for a cause greater than themselves. She began to understand that leadership was not about fear or authority. It was about inspiration, trust, and example. One night during a planning session, Kane spoke quietly to Selara. "Tomorrow, we'll send Rin and Taro to scout the enemy's supply route. It's risky, but the information they bring back will be crucial. We cannot strike blindly. I will stay here and coordinate with the others. We must be ready for anything." This was an opportunity, not a decisive battle, but a way to weaken them, gain confidence, and show her people that resistance was possible. Kane turned to her. "This is your chance to show leadership. You decide how we strike, how we move. I will support you, but this is your plan." She was a leader who could inspire, strategize, and act. Together with Kane and the coalition, she would reclaim her kingdom step by step, using intelligence, courage, and trust as her weapons. The strike was planned carefully. Rin and Taro would lead a small team to disable enemy supply transports, while Selara and Kane coordinated from the base, ready to respond if needed. Every detail was considered, every possibility anticipated. For the first time, Selara felt the thrill of preparation, the satisfaction of using strategy rather than force to achieve a goal. When the moment came, the team moved with precision. Rin darted through the shadows, silent and invisible, disabling patrol drones and unlocking gates. Taro and the others struck key points, disabling the supply transports with minimal risk. Selara monitored every move, heart racing with excitement and tension. Kane guided them, offering advice and adjustments, yet never taking control away from her. By the end of the mission, the supply line was disrupted, enemy forces were confused, and the small team returned safely to the moon base. Selara allowed herself a rare smile. For the first time since the fall of her city, she felt victory, not complete, not final, but real and earned. Her people could see that resistance was possible, and she could see that she had grown as a leader. That evening, as the team celebrated quietly, Kane approached her. "You did well," he said. "Not because of me, but because of yourself. You made the decisions, you took responsibility, and you led. And you showed me that humans are not the only ones capable of learning. You adapt, you think, and you act. That is why I fight with you." Together, they would reclaim her throne, restore order, and prove that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the darkest betrayal. Selara knew the road ahead would be difficult. Enemy forces were strong, and the loyalists she hoped to inspire would be cautious. Yet for the first time, she believed not just in survival, but in victory. And she understood more clearly than ever that sometimes the most unlikely alliances, the human and the alien, the outsider and the monarch, could become the strongest force in the galaxy. The moon base was quiet at dawn, though the activity inside was anything but. Queen Selara moved swiftly through the corridors, reviewing maps and data with Captain Daniel Kane at her side. Every surface of the small command room was covered with screens, displays, and holographic projections of enemy positions, supply lines, and patrol patterns. The air was filled with the hum of machines and the soft voices of the coalition as they prepared for what would be their first major counterattack. Selara stood over the central hologram, pointing to the glowing paths that marked the enemy supply routes. "If we strike here," she said, "we can disrupt their logistics, confuse their soldiers, and buy time for loyalists in the city to regroup. This is our best chance to show that resistance is possible." "It's risky," he said. "They have scouts and patrols in the area, but with timing, speed, and precision, we can succeed. The key is coordination. Everyone must act together." Each member had been assigned a task. Some would disable patrol drones, others would sabotage supply ships, and a small group would serve as a rapid response team in case things went wrong. Selara felt a surge of pride. These were not soldiers trained in her palace, not guards who had fled when danger came. These were individuals who had chosen to act, who had risked everything for a cause greater than themselves. Kane leaned closer to her. "Remember," he said quietly, "this is not just about destroying supplies. It's about sending a message. Your people need to see that you are still in control, that the Queen has returned to lead." She had seen her city fall, had felt the sting of betrayal, but now she had a plan. She would strike with intelligence, courage, and strategy. The enemy would see that Viera still had a queen, and that she would not be defeated so easily. The strike team moved out in small, fast ships, slipping silently through the darkness of space. Selara and Kane coordinated from the base, monitoring their progress and communicating with precise instructions. Every movement was calculated, every decision deliberate. Selara marveled at Kane's ability to anticipate the enemy's reactions, to think 3, 4 steps ahead. She had always relied on the loyalty of others, but Kane relied on logic, observation, and quick thinking. She realized that this combination, her leadership and his strategy, was powerful. As the team approached the enemy supply route, tension filled the command room. Celera's fingers gripped the edge of the console, her heart racing. She had faced battles before, but nothing like this. Nothing where every moment counted, where the lives of her people and her new allies rested on precise execution. The first squad slipped past enemy patrols with ease, disabling drones and unlocking gates. Celera watched the holographic displays, tracking their progress, feeling both fear and exhilaration. Kane's voice guided them, calm and precise, even as alarms briefly rang in their heads. "Adjust your course by 3 degrees," he instructed. "The patrols are converging here." The second squad reached the supply ships, using advanced tools to disable engines and communications. Celera's pulse quickened as she watched the enemy scramble to respond. Confusion spread quickly through their forces, exactly as Kane had predicted. She allowed herself a small smile. Strategy, preparation, and courage had won the first advantage. Suddenly, an alarm rang from the outer perimeter. A small enemy scout had detected part of their operation. Kane's fingers flew across the controls, issuing rapid commands. "Deploy the response team now. Cover the scouts and keep the enemy off balance." The mission continued smoothly, though tense moments tested their coordination. Kane's calm, calculated guidance allowed Celera to make quick decisions. When a supply ship attempted to escape, she directed a squad to intercept it, their maneuvers precise and controlled. The human soldier's strategy was flawless, yet he allowed her to lead, to make the calls, giving her confidence she had not felt since ascending the throne. Finally, the strike was complete. The enemy supply line was disrupted, their forces confused, and the team returned to the moon base without a single casualty. Celera exhaled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time since the fall of her city, she felt victory. Though small, it was significant. Kane approached her, his expression calm but approving. "You led well," he said. "Every decision, every command came from you. I only guided and supported. Your people will see this, and they will remember." She looked at the coalition members, their faces showing a mix of exhaustion and pride. These were not her palace guards. They were individuals who had chosen to fight, who had risked everything for what was right. She realized that leadership was not about authority, rank, or fear. It was about courage, inspiration, and trust. That evening, the team celebrated quietly, sharing food and stories, their laughter echoing through the base. Celera sat beside Kane, reflecting on the day's events. She had learned much, not just about strategy, but about herself, about leadership, and about the power of unlikely alliances. "You did well today," Kane said, his voice low but sincere. "Not because of me, but because of yourself. You took responsibility, made decisions, and led. That is why I fight with you. And sometimes, we survive by thinking differently than everyone else." Together, they would reclaim her throne, restore her people, and prove that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome even the darkest betrayal. The next morning, Celera stood at the command center, reviewing plans for the next phase. The enemy would not wait, and neither could she. Kane briefed the team on the next steps: further intelligence gathering, small strikes to weaken the enemy's communications, and coordination with loyalist groups still hiding in the city. Celera absorbed every detail, her mind sharp and focused. She realized that the fall of her city had taught her many lessons. Fear could destroy, betrayal could wound, but strategy, courage, and trust could rebuild. She would lead not by demanding loyalty, but by inspiring it. She would act not by relying on fear, but by using intelligence and preparation. And above all, she would protect her people, with the help of those willing to stand by her, including the human who had refused to abandon her. As the moon base prepared for another night of planning and coordination, Celera felt a sense of determination stronger than she had ever known. The road ahead would be dangerous, the enemy powerful, and the challenges immense. Yet for the first time, she believed not just in survival, but in victory. And with Kane at her side, she knew that nothing, not betrayal, not overwhelming odds, not fear, could stop them from reclaiming Viera and restoring hope to her people. The first rays of the gas giant's light reflected off the hull of the ships waiting to return to Viera. Queen Celera stood on the command deck, her eyes fixed on the distant planet. It looked peaceful from this distance, but she knew that beneath its surface, chaos and fear still lingered. The city she loved had been betrayed once, abandoned by the very people sworn to protect it, but she was not the same leader who had watched helplessly from her palace balcony. She was stronger, wiser, and prepared. Captain Daniel Kane approached her quietly, his calm presence grounding her. "The fleet is ready," he said. "We have enough supplies and our allies are in position. This will be a precision strike, not a full assault. We hit the enemy where they are weak and rally the people to our side." She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, building alliances, gathering intelligence, and teaching those around her that strategy, courage, and trust could win battles that brute force could not. Kane's guidance had been invaluable, but the responsibility was hers. Today, she would reclaim her city. The ships glided silently through space, their engines whispering against the darkness. Solara observed every detail, every formation, and every signal from their allies. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. The enemy would not surrender easily, but they had underestimated the power of unity, intelligence, and human ingenuity. As they approached the outskirts of Viera, the city came into view. Fires still burned in the lower districts, and enemy patrols moved in predictable patterns across the crystal spires. Solara studied the data projected on the hollow display, noting every weakness and every opportunity. Kane stood beside her, silent but alert, ready to act whenever necessary. "Remember," he said quietly, "this is about precision. Disrupt them, show your people you are back, and avoid unnecessary confrontation. Your goal is to reclaim loyalty and inspire confidence, not destruction." She nodded to Kane and then to the fleet commander. "We move now," she said. The first strike team moved swiftly and silently, landing on the outskirts of the city. Using a combination of stealth and speed, they disabled enemy communications and disrupted patrol routes. Rin, the alien scout, led a small group to take out key observation points, while Taro and his warriors blocked reinforcements. Solara coordinated from above, her mind calculating every move, anticipating every reaction. The enemy, taken by surprise, scrambled to respond. Their forces were disorganized and confused, unable to predict the precise strikes and careful maneuvers orchestrated by Solara and Kane. Ships that had once patrolled freely were grounded or diverted, supply lines disrupted, and morale shattered. Solara watched as the city began to respond. Citizens who had hidden, who had feared for their lives, now stepped out, emboldened by the presence of their queen and the visible support of the coalition. Solara felt a surge of pride and relief. Her people had not been abandoned completely. They had only needed a spark, a sign that resistance was possible. And she, standing with Kane at her side, had become that spark. The next phase involved reclaiming the central palace, the symbolic heart of Viera. Kane advised caution. "The palace is heavily guarded, but most of the enemy forces are focused on supplies and patrols. We move at dawn. You will lead the ground team, and we will coordinate from the fleet." She gathered a small team of loyalists and coalition members. As they moved through the streets, she observed her city in ruin, yet alive. Fires smoldered, but the people were moving, inspired by the strikes and the presence of the fleet. She realized that victory was not just in battle. It was in showing her people that hope could survive even the darkest betrayal. The palace came into view, its towering spires scarred by previous attacks. Enemy guards stood in formation, ready to defend their position. Solara's pulse quickened, but she kept her composure. She had learned from Kane that fear could cloud judgment, but confidence and careful strategy could overcome it. "Move in 3 groups," she instructed. "Flank from both sides, I will lead the center. Keep communication open, and remember, precision is key." Solara stepped into the main hall, her eyes sweeping over the once-abandoned throne room. The guards who had fled now stood before her, their faces pale with fear and shame. Solara's gaze was steady. "You abandoned your queen," she said calmly. "You left your people to suffer while you ran. Now you must answer for your choices." Solara shook her head. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite it. You failed. Your loyalty was not earned, and it is lost." She turned to Kane, who had remained by her side throughout. "We will rebuild, but not with those who cannot stand when needed." Solara understood that her kingdom could only survive and thrive if loyalty was earned through trust, respect, and courage, not demanded through fear. Kane placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You've done it," he said quietly. "Your people see your strength, and the enemy knows they cannot win. This is just the beginning, but it is a powerful start. The strength was always yours. Humans help, but they do not replace the courage of a queen who refuses to give up." She realized that leadership was not just about authority. It was about example, courage, and the willingness to act when others would flee. Over the next few days, Solara worked tirelessly to rebuild her city, restore order, and strengthen the bonds between her people and the coalition. She ensured that the enemy's influence was removed, that loyalists were recognized and supported, and that those who had abandoned their duty were held accountable. Kane remained at her side, guiding, advising, and supporting, never taking credit but always ready when needed. One evening, as the sun set over the crystal towers, Solara and Kane stood together on the balcony, overlooking the city. Fires had been extinguished, streets were clearing, and citizens were beginning to repair their homes. The sense of hope and renewal was palpable. "You have changed this city," Kane said softly. "Not just through strategy or battle, but through example. They see courage, intelligence, and trust in action. They will remember this. We have changed it together. You showed me a way to act beyond tradition, to lead with strategy and trust, and to protect what matters. I owe you more than I can ever repay. Not just in courage, but in ingenuity, loyalty, and action. You have shown me that sometimes the strongest ally comes from the most unexpected place. Together, we make a good team." And in the human soldier who had never abandoned her, she had found not just a protector, but a symbol of what humanity could bring to the galaxy: courage, cleverness, and unwavering loyalty. As the stars appeared above Viera that night, Solara felt a sense of peace she had not known since her city fell. She had survived betrayal, faced overwhelming odds, and reclaimed her throne. She had done it not alone, but with allies, with courage, and with the human who had chosen to protect her when everyone else had run. And in that moment, she knew that the future was brighter than the past. Viera would thrive again, not just because of power or armies, but because of trust, courage, and the extraordinary bond between a queen and the human soldier who refused to abandon her. Together, they had proven that even in the darkest times, hope, intelligence, and loyalty could prevail.